Okay, I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee, December 15th, 2020. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for your service on this board. Our last meeting was a bit of a long one. Hopefully we can wrap up our business today a little bit more quickly. The first thing we need to do is approval of the minutes from the November 16th meeting of the AHAC. May I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
A second?
I'll second it.
A motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. So at this time, I'd invite anyone from the public wishing to speak to an item not on today's agenda to come forward. Seeing no one, we'll close the public comment period. So today's meeting is primarily to approve the local housing incentive strategy. And so the discussions you've had over the last two meetings have created that document. It's an update to our previous strategy. A lot of the recommendations, and I'll roll through them in a moment, you've continued from prior AHAC recommendations. Some you've made minor changes to, language changes to, and there's some new stuff that you also brought forward. I want to thank you because I think we had some really active discussions. I think this board was very engaged. A lot of times advisory committees, it seems to be a rubber stamp on things, and that's frustrating, but this was not that. I thought we got some great feedback. Our affordable housing crisis, as we all call it these days, is so well known, and it's heightened more so than I think it's ever been from, in terms of meeting with this AHAC. We've met every 3 years now for the last several years, and we're in a point now where it's more of a problem than it's ever been. I think the recession we saw several years ago drove a lot of people to the rental side of things, and that really just drove those rental prices sky high, and we're seeing people that just can't afford a decent place to live. So it's very timely that we put this committee together, and I think it's very important. And now, thanks to our Florida legislature, we'll be doing this annually. So if you think you had any unfinished business during this process, we will reconvene again in the fall. We'll go through the same process, and I anticipate most of you, if not, probably not all of you, but most of you will be on the board next time around. So again, thank you very much. So I'm going to deliver a brief presentation on what you've all done and what that local housing incentive strategy is and how it guides us. And then I'll take questions, and then I'll ask for a motion and a second, and that will open the floor to public comment. It will open the floor to board comments, and then following that, we'll ask you to approve the item. Okay? So just rolling through it real quick. The AHAC it's a very prescribed process, and it's required by statute. The AHAC is required to consider 11 criteria that affect affordable housing, and it's all related to our development guidelines, our regulations, our ordinances, our resolutions, anything that might add cost to development that might deter someone from building affordable housing. That's what these 11 criteria are focused on. Okay, so they're listed alphabetically. So A, the processing of approvals of development orders or permits for affordable housing projects is expedited to a greater degree than other projects. This is already in place, and it has been for several years. We had some discussion about it. When we have a project come through that we determine meets the criteria, the definition of workforce or affordable housing by the city's definition, then we sign a form. That form is submitted with that permit, with that application, and when that happens, that project always goes to the top of the list in terms of review. So it always gets priority. So that is in place, and you all recognize that, I believe. B, the modification of impact fee requirements, including reduction or waiver of fees and alternative methods of fee payments for affordable housing. So in 2008, the AHAC decided not to make a recommendation on this issue. Impact fees are a bit complicated. There are 3 departments that collect impact fees in our city: Parks and Rec, our Public Utilities Department for sewer and water, and our traffic operations. Traffic is combined with the county. we're going to conduct an analysis of impact fees, and that's what you've recommended that we do. And when we get done with that analysis, I think we're going to find three very different conclusions on the flexibility and the latitude we have with each of those impact fees. So it seems on the surface to be a simple analysis. It's not. There are a lot of factors at play. But I plan to conduct that analysis internally and have it complete by the time the AHAC reconvenes in the fall. And I'll report that back to you, and then we can decide, or you can all decide on whether or not you have a recommendation with that information at hand, okay? C, the allowance of flexibility and densities of affordable housing. This is already in place. Our code allows for a flexible, for a density boost for projects that qualify as affordable housing under the city's definition. So that density boost is anywhere from a 20% to a 50% density boost, depending on the mixture of affordable workforce units to market rate units. So that's already in place. D, the reservation of infrastructure capacity or housing for low to moderate income persons. As with other previous AHACs, you decided not to make a recommendation on this. Our city is very built out. The infrastructure is in place. Most of the stuff that happens, most of the development is infill projects. The infrastructure is there. There's really not a compelling need to create policy to reserve that capacity. So no recommendation there from the AHAC. E, the allowance of affordable accessory residential units in residential zoning districts. So we talked about this quite a bit, and it's something that we're going to give strong consideration to as we update our comprehensive plan. Okay, it's already allowed at some level, but there's certainly opportunity to expand that, and so it becomes more readily accessible to people that want to make that investment. F, the reduction of parking and setback requirements for affordable housing. This is already provided for in our code. So that's already in place. The allowance of flexible lot configurations, including zero lot line configurations for affordable housing. Again, that's already allowable in our code. H, the modification of street requirements for affordable housing. No recommendation here either. We are a very built-out city. Our street grid is very well established. For any new roads that are built, we have very clear criteria is what those need to be. So there was no recommendation from the AHAC. That's really probably more applicable to a greenfield community than us. I, the establishment of a process by which local government considers before adoption policies, procedures, ordinances, regulations, or plan provisions that increase the cost of housing. So with any plans that are put forth by planning and development, any modifications to plans the planning and development puts forth, we are very much engaged in that. We work very closely with them on working through that process. As far as policies, ordinances, all of those types of things are vetted by our senior executive team. There are senior executive team meetings every 2 weeks, I believe, on Mondays following the work sessions. So when those are raised, department staff, Denise Sanderson, if not her, I am at attendance at those meetings. And when those policies, ordinances are presented, we look at them through this lens, and we can evaluate them and discuss them at that level. So there is a procedure in place for that. J, the preparation of a printed inventory of locally owned public land suitable for affordable housing. This is a statutory requirement. We meet this. We're in compliance with this. Every 3 years, council approves a list of city-owned properties that are available for affordable housing. Sometimes we update that between updates. If we get a rash of a few properties that come into our ownership, we'll add them to the list sometimes. But that list is in place. It's on our website. If we have time later in the meeting, I want to roll through that list with you because there was some discussion about that list. I want to show you what that list is and the status of each of those properties. So if we have time to do that, I'd like to do that with you all. The last of the 11 required components is support of development near transportation hubs, the major employment centers, and mixed-use developments. This is already required under our code, already provided for by our code. So Section 3-920 is the section of our code that relates specifically to affordable housing. It's addressed in there. You can reduce your parking requirement if your development is within 1,000 feet of a transit stop So it is in our code, and it's something that we pay attention to, certainly. Again, we talked about the impact fee study. We'll take care of that. We'll reconvene in the fall, and I'll have some information for you on that. There were some other items that the committee raised, some other recommendations that were not part of the required components, the 11 required criteria. We talked a little bit about adaptive reuse. It's allowable, where allowable in our code. Folks can take, for example, a former school building and convert it for housing. And I think the recommendation was that we continue to allow that in our code, because those opportunities can be very helpful. Talked a little bit about land development, our land development code, specifically 3-920 as it relates to affordable housing. I think the committee was pretty satisfied with that code. Didn't recommend any changes to that section of the code in terms of architectural requirements and the like. And there's a lot in there, but I think the recommendation was to continue and not make any changes to that. Talked a lot about our marketing. You made some recommendations that we make some changes to our website. We do plan to do that. I'll work directly with our public communications department, and we will certainly try to achieve everything that you told us in reconfiguring our website, making it more user-friendly for developers, and even for those with the programs we have for the direct residents that can be helped. So there's really two different sides of that. There's informing the developer on the incentives, the opportunities, and then informing the residents on opportunities for them. They're two completely different things, and we capture both we do capture both in our current website. I think we could do a better job, and so your point's well taken. Talked a little bit about finances, the funding that we have to distribute to developers. I think the biggest takeaway from the committee was our DPA program. You made a recommendation that we increase the subsidy in our DPA program. So at the end of the day, what you have is the gap between what people are being approved for in a first mortgage and what that price is widening. And our current DPA maximum of $20,000 for an existing home doesn't cover that gap. So we do have a subsidy of $45,000 for new construction. I think we're probably going to raise the subsidy for an existing home to $45,000 as well. I think we're going to do that, and I think we're going to do that. We're certainly going to evaluate that, and and we'll make that change with our local housing assistance plan that we put together in the spring. Okay, the NAHAB will have a lot to say about that. We'll go to council, I think, in March or April. So we'll bring that forward. Now that also brings into the question, okay, when it comes time to paying that loan back, how does that look? Now we need to look at that very carefully, because right now that $20,000 loan is deferred for 5 years. So after 5 years, they begin paying that back, 0% interest over 20 years. So now they have an increased payment. Okay, we're going to double that. Now, are we going to double that payment because we're going from 20 to 40 or 45? So we may have to look at a reduced payment through the life of the affordability period, and then maybe when that affordability period is up, the remainder of that loan is forgiven. Those are along the lines of what we're thinking. So what we don't want to do is put someone in a position where they're going to fail 5 years down the road. So we have to be very careful about that. Okay. And then you talked a little bit about partnerships. That's our world. That's what we do. We try to build partnerships. We try to help developers become comfortable working in Clearwater, working with us, understanding our programs. We want our residents to be comfortable and understand the opportunities that are out there for them. We work hard at partnerships, and that's something we will continue to do. I think building relationships is 24/7. I think that's the biggest part of the job. So that's my presentation. I wanted to just kind of roll through each of the things and highlight each of the things that you recommended. At this point, I'd be happy to take any questions from any of the members. Did you have a question?
No,
Oh, I thought
I'm all good.
Okay, good. 2 thumbs up, I like that. Well, that's terrific. So, we're going to need a motion to approve the local housing incentive strategy update.
I move to approve the local housing strategy update.
May I have a second?
I second the motion.
Okay. Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on this item? Seeing no one, I'll close the floor to public comments. Do we have any comments from the board? Yes, Ms. Peckman.
So thank you for this work. I feel really honored to be on this board and to work on this complex issue that I'm learning about every day. A couple of comments I had was, I'm hoping that next year when we review it, we can look at putting in some measurables where it might be appropriate. And I know that Chuck and I had I had an email question about measurable goals, and that if we put some measurable goals in the document, they become a requirement and they may not align with the funding levels that we get, that we have no control over from federal or state sources. And I understand that, but I'm thinking we're going to get some funding. But if we have some goals that are truly important to us, related to things that have an expense, then I would think that the council would find some money somewhere to help us realize those goals. I mean, it's just something to think about. For me to learn about through this next spring and summer before we meet in the fall. So I'm not, I want to look at that. And then maybe we could have measurable goals about where the wording says, affordable housing is moved to the front of the line for permitting or inspections or things like that. Could we have, they'll get their permitting within 10 days or 5 days or whatever, pull a number, I don't know, but have something that's more concrete there. So, I'd like us to, I'm going to learn more about that. I reached out to a friend who's on this committee for St. Pete and asked, how did you all approach the 11 requirements and what are you all doing? And so I think if, we can learn what other municipalities are doing in the county as well, I think that's a good thing. There were a couple things about the, let's see. Okay. Can we ask now? Let's see. Okay, you're going to talk about the list of land inventory and how accurate that is, so that's good. This is about those ADUs, because that's pretty popular for people to look at, these accessory dwelling units, and people email me articles every now and then about why can't we do this in Clearwater and stuff. Is there ever, and I know it's part of our comprehensive plan update, which is supposed to be completed within the next year and a half or 2 years, but is there any possibility that we can approve this particular ADU on this particular neighborhood, or is that those exceptions don't ever happen? It has to be part of the whole comp plan. So the answer is just to tell people, look, you just got to wait till the comprehensive plan is done.
Ms. Clayton, best answer on this one.
Good morning, Gina Clayton, Planning and Development Director. The issue is that with an accessory dwelling unit, you're exceeding the allowable density. So that's why we have to amend the comprehensive plan to give us that authority. We also then have to put it in the the community development code to authorize it. So we don't have any sort of mechanism to grant density variances, if you will. So that's why it has to be, set up in the comprehensive plan.
Okay.
So even if we started now to do, the issue with moving it forward now outside of the comp plan update is that, first of all, we have 2 long-range planners. They're going to be working on North Greenwood CRA. They're going to be working on a comp plan update. They're working on a downtown plan update. So for us to take this issue and put it on a parallel track is just not feasible. And we'll have the benefit of all the research that is being done to build the basis for the amendment for the comprehensive plan. It's something we're definitely going to put forward. We put it forward in 2008, and it got approved in the way that it did, which was not really an increase in density. So I think that's a really long-winded answer, but there's no mechanism to grant the variance in place right now. There could be some things in the countywide rules that already allow us to do that. We just don't have it in our regulatory framework, so that's the issue for us now.
And then one other thing about, when we talked about modification, putting affordable housing near transportation corridors and all that. We've made a couple of exceptions, the city has, like putting those storage units out on 19 that don't really fit in with what would be best out there. We can try not to do that so much.
Well, first, are you talking about the US 19 situation?
Yeah.
Well, the US 19 plan allows self-storage in the corridor areas, which is not in the regional centers or the neighborhood centers. That's originally how it was set up.
Okay.
And then council amended the code to allow self-storage in very limited areas.
Okay. I think that's.
Gina, I'd like to ask you, is it possible, when we're talking about the ADUs, and I understand we're talking about a big, well, we've got to look at the zoning. There's a lot of factors there. One of the factors I would think is some of us, including myself, think that the ADUs, the tiny homes, might be a solution for workforce housing. But you know what? They might not be. And is there a possibility within the next 18 months, as we're coming up with a final plan, that we could have some kind of an experimental tiny homes situation, one area located that we try it and see if it works, and that way, at the end of when we get to the large plan, we say, yeah, we've tried these, they work, or you know what, the reality is they don't work very well.
Right, I think with tiny homes, with what you're talking about, would really constitute a development per se instead of an additional ADU.
No, that would be an ADU on a couple of different, if somebody has a piece of property that's big enough and they wanted to put a tiny home on it, we could actually see how it all works in reality.
A tiny home by itself, or
sitting on somebody's backyard, for example.
Okay, well, the only way we could do that under today's regulatory framework is if the lot was large enough to support 2 units, because we don't have a mechanism to exceed the allowable density of a lot. So the way that council approached this issue when we updated the plan before was if the lot was big enough. So it didn't really allow a true accessory dwelling. So we don't have the mechanism. Now, we do have some property in downtown where the density is high enough, and I think Pierre has recently done something that's similar to this where, he built a duplex and then a garage apartment above, and we did that through the downtown plan, but again, the density was there to support it, so it's not truly a ADU in the sense that you're talking about. We have had some conversation with some people who were maybe interested in doing a tiny home village or just a tiny home development, and that could be done, but we haven't had anyone bring forward an actual, proposal to do that. So I'm sorry, I can't.
No, it's okay, but is it feasible, if someone brought forth that idea, is it feasible that could be done, a tiny home village? With the current zoning?
With the proper zoning, it's possible if multiple units are allowed. Like I would say in a multifamily zoning district, you could have multi-units, or even in, say, like a property that's zoned MDR, that would allow a number of homes. I think there's a way that we could certainly get someone through the regulatory process.
Good. All right.
Oh, I have one other thing, not necessarily for Gina, but, so we have these 11, alphabetized indicators, and there are a number of them that we're already doing, which is great. But is there a mechanism to have updates provided to us between now and next early fall when we meet again to see how we're doing. And then you and I had kind of talked before the meeting about us being released from sunshine so we can all talk to each other.
Yeah, we'll sunset the committee in January. And at that point, the committee no longer exists. You're free to talk amongst each other. And when that happens, unless anyone has an objection, and you can email me if you do, I will send contact information, emails, probably more than anything, to each of you so you're able to communicate freely. Instead of blind copying you, I'll actually copy you on that email, or send it to each of you. So updates between now and then. I think if there's anything significant, I think I can certainly pass it along. Like I said, we're meeting annually now, so it's really going to take maybe the form of a continuous committee rather than sunset and start, which is actually what we're going to do every year. But the fact that we're meeting annually, I think it allows us to keep things on the table and keep things moving forward. So, but yeah, if anything significant, I think I'd be comfortable passing that along to the board, to the committee.
Okay, the website's been updated, check out the developer
Yeah.
section or something like that.
Yeah.
Denise Anderson, Economic Development and Housing. I was just going to suggest that because the NAHAB comprises the majority of this board, is 7 members, as you know, of this committee, we'll have to be cautious that any items that may actually come before NAHAB is not discussed amongst the group, because NAHAB is still a convened standing advisory board. So, does that make sense to everybody?
And certainly the NAHAB is a good forum to disseminate any updates. And there are, I think, 4 other members beyond the NAHAB on this committee. So we will certainly keep the NAHAB posted, and when appropriate, I'll certainly let the other 4 members know exactly what's going on when we have some significant changes. So, thank you. Are there any other questions? Oh, yes?
I have one more question, and I apologize to the group for missing the last couple meetings, which seemed to be very progressive and great conversation. So it is my understanding we're going to approve the incentives right now, and then the next meeting for the AHAG would be in the fall. Between now and then, is there any way for us to make recommendations, like Kathleen was mentioning, timing or more tangible recommendations for these AHAG, or once we approve, there's nothing until the fall and we start conversation again?
Well, you're certainly welcome to communicate with me on any thoughts you have, any recommendations you have. But this is statutory, a statutory requirement. And what happens now is you approve that document. Okay, the board approves that document. Council will be asked to accept that document on Thursday. That document then becomes incorporated into our local housing assistance plan. And our local housing assistance plan is our regulatory document. It governs how we administer SHIP funding in that program. So these incentives become part of what is required of us as staff. Okay, so making changes to that, we have to be very careful about how we step through that. So mid-year, we can make changes to the LHAP mid-year. Some changes require council approval, some don't. But if you have any thoughts or recommendations, any of you throughout the year, you're welcome to contact me directly on any ideas, thoughts you have. And if I think appropriate, certainly I can take a next step with them, depending on the latitude that we have. So, thank you for that question. Any other questions? So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. So the next steps, as I just touched on, we'll ask the board. We will ask the council to sunset this committee, and that'll happen in January. But your recommendations will continue to guide staff, obviously. Like I said, this document will be incorporated into our LHAP, and that becomes part of our guiding document that we have to use. So a lot of the notes I have that I'm going to present, I have just said. So again, we've had some great feedback in this, throughout this process, and I just want to thank everybody for your engagement. I think it's been a really great discussion, and, you know, my time here in this position, I think this has been about the most active and engaged board that we've had, and I thank you all for that. All right, so what I'd like to do briefly, like I said earlier, is take you through something happened here. Hold on one second. Okay. This is our list of city-owned properties that are available for affordable housing. We have to update this list every 3 years. It's due to be updated again in next year, I believe. Okay, we did do kind of a midterm update. This was last updated in 2019. Okay, so you can see from the map here, most of the properties, all of those to the north, are within the North Greenwood community. There's one property in the East Gateway, and there are 2 properties in Lake Bellevue. Okay, so I'm going to take you through each of these properties and give you a brief update on what they are. Okay, so this one's in Lake Bellevue. It's about 1.3 acres. It's just south of Ross Norton Recreation Center. The density on this, about when you include the density boost for affordable housing, somewhere around 22, 23. We're working with a group that's very interested in doing a multifamily project on this site. I think we're going to put it out to RFP, okay? And the reason for that is we're allowed to donate property less than 5 acres for affordable housing, okay? So what that does is that allows us now to do an RFP, where when we sell property regularly under our charter, we can't do an RFP. We have to sell to the highest bidder. Now we can stipulate the future use of that property, what it needs to be, and that can qualify bidders in itself. But among the qualifying bidders, we have to take the highest price above the appraised value. We don't have to do that with affordable housing less than 5 acres. So what we can do is we can put out an RFP, and we can select a project based on the merits of the project. So we can take the best project. So I think it's incumbent on us as staff to put this out there and see who out there is going to give us the best product. So that's what we're going, even though we have a very competent and engaged group, I think we need to take that step. So that's what we're going to do. Just west of that, you can see that housing development is Norton Apartments. It's owned by the Pinellas County Housing Authority. We actually approached them about building out this site. They were interested, but they had other priorities, so they kind of passed on it. They may be involved in managing a product that ends up on this site. So this one has been donated and sold to a homeowner, Habitat for Humanity. Built this project out. It is a single-family home to a home buyer, 80% area median income and under. This piece of property is in our gateway. The map is configured so you can see the proximity to Cleveland Street. Unfortunately, what you can't really see is the entire property here on that southwest corner. That is about 3.5 acres. And we have a developer that is going to build 171 units on that project. He's finalizing his funding with the county. That funding has not been approved yet. It's not got to the finish line yet, so it's still tentative. But everything looks positive for this project to move forward. All of the units will be 120% of AMI or below. So this is truly a workforce housing project. There are going to be a number of units at 80% AMI and below, a number at 100% of AMI and below. So there's a good mix there. Very attractive project. So we're excited about that. And this site will be used for staging as that project's going on. That developer is actually interested in building it out once completed, with the project here. So we'll see how that goes. But right now we're holding it for staging for the larger project. This parcel was donated to Habitat for Humanity. It's a tough one because it's zoned commercial. It's zoned commercial, so it takes a bit of a process through our comp infill process to get the entitlements to build a single family home there. But that's hopefully that gets started in the next year. This street in itself here is interesting because a couple of fairly new homes here. Habitat for Humanity owns this. We own this. We just did a rehab project here. If you drive down the street, you're going to see a street that's very blighted. There's just a lot of, vagrancy, and it's just not one of the attractive streets in the neighborhood. And I think with the opportunities we have, we can make a difference on the street, and that's through partnership with Habitat for Humanity, which is very strong. That's the piece that I told you that we own on that street as well, and has been donated to Habitat for Humanity. This parcel here on Monroe Ave, Clearwater Neighborhood Housing Services owns this land over here. They believe they have an inside track maybe to acquire this, so we're holding on to this because if and when they're ready to build, and they're more so in single-family homes, it makes a lot of sense for us to donate this property to them. Maybe economies of scale, maybe a single mobilization and 3 homes, something in that neighborhood. So we're kind of holding the fort on that one. So no movement there. This one here, we have some active discussions with a group to build a single-family home on that property. That will go to council, I believe, in January. Okay, it's going to be a smaller home. If you see closely in the aerial, the home to the right is very close to encroaching. So it makes that in itself makes it even a smaller parcel. So we're going to try to work with that and put a smaller home on that site. This is under construction with Emerge Community Development Corporation. The building, I believe, a 3-family home. It's a great lot. It's right behind our North MLK Aquatic and Recreation Center on Nicholson Street. I'm sorry, three bedroom. I'm sorry about that. Thank you. 3-bedroom home. This is also under construction. Habitat for Humanity is building this home right now. Good sized lot, 10,000 square feet. We're hoping to get 2 lots out of it, but there's some very mature live oaks on the property that really made it difficult. So we reduced it to 1 lot. We're having some active discussions about this with a group that we have not done business with yet, but I'm kind of encouraged by them because their product is it's a prefab home. It's not a tiny home. It's not a mobile home, but it's a home that they can build at a price point where they can work with 80% AMI folks without subsidy, and that's very rare in our world. So if we can find a developer that can do that, I think that's a great step. I really do. So this, if nothing else, would be a test case with them. I'd like to see it happen and see if they can do more work like that. This property we haven't done anything with because it's commercially zoned. It's on North MLK. And the reason we haven't done anything with it is I think Gina mentioned briefly earlier, we're working to create a CRA in the North Greenwood neighborhood. And any commercial opportunities we have along that main drag on North MLK, I think we need to preserve for future opportunities. So that's why we're holding on to that one. And for that reason, we may need to knock it off the list the next time around. This piece here is associated with the next page. So you can see what we have here. We're working with a group, Clearwater Neighborhood Housing Services, that owns this. Okay, and it makes sense that we work with them because our land can leverage a larger project. Okay, kind of the odd kind of thing here is what you have is you have a different land use here than you do on the south side of Grant. Here we're allowed 7.5 units an acre. Here they're allowed 15 units an acre. So our property alone could only house about 3 units, right? Now when you combine all the land into one project, you can get 9, 10. So it's really kind of leveraging our property for a better project. So we hope to work with them. We're waiting on a concept design from them. And I'll keep you posted on that one because that could be an exciting project.
Chuck, was that one that could be mixed use, given that it's right on that strip? To go back to the TRA comment?
Yeah, it could be. It is zoned residential.
Oh, okay.
So mixed use residential. So it's no. The answer is no. Down here was zoned commercial. There was a zoning change by a previous owner, so that would have been an option back in the day. But no, residential. So we're looking at a multifamily. They're talking about a project that incorporates some home ownership and some rental.
Okay.
But we don't have a concept yet. It's just been discussions. So, any questions on any of the land holdings? Okay.
I had a question on the, I think it's the one in Lake Bellevue, that is less than 5 acres, and you thought it could be, I don't know, but maybe it was 21 something, but would that be a spot to try a tiny home thing? You know, is it, because it's zoned for medium density or something, you know, however that's zoned?
It's possible, you know, I mean, with the allowance of 20, 22, 23 units.
Yeah,
I don't think you're gonna get that with a tiny home, with tiny home village. I think, and I think personally, you know, in studying up on this stuff, to me, you know, tiny homes, I think I think if you take a tiny home and you put it on a full single-family lot, I think you're, in a challenged neighborhood, I think you're reinforcing that it's a challenged neighborhood. I think if you take a cluster of tiny homes in a lot like this, I think that's a much more effective use of tiny homes. And I'd love to find a project like that. This one, there might be some opportunity costs because of the densities we'd be losing. But it's something we can consider, you know. I'd hate to give up the opportunity to, you know, to put 22, 23 units in when, you know, maybe a tiny home cluster would be, you know, 7 or 8.
so it wouldn't be 20 tiny homes for one person? There's no way you could do, you know?
I think you'd have trouble fitting that many.
Yeah, there's no way.
Yeah, I think it'd be difficult, yeah.
You said it's, how many acres is it?
1.3,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's really close.
yeah. And, you know, a multifamily project would really fall in line with the scale of the project behind. I think it makes a lot of sense. So, you know, what we end up having is there's really 13 sites. Well, really 12, because the 2 are combined with 1. And we have active discussions. We're actually talking with developers on 4 of those sites. We've donated and built and sold to a homeowner 1 of those sites. We've done nothing with 3 of the sites for the various reasons I mentioned. We've donated and awaiting construction 2 sites, donated and under construction 2 sites. So I think you can see we're pretty active with this list and clearing out this list. So I think we've done a pretty good job with that, so.
If I can make a quick recommendation, I think because especially of the RFP and that you discussed and some of those opportunities that arise, it would be great if that list was shared through partnership with the Chamber of Commerce, some of the things we talked about previously, because you never know who might see their communications and might not see, you know, what the city is putting out there, just as an extra kind of layer of communication.
Yeah, we keep it on our website, but yeah, I think we could do a better job at putting it out there, and that's Chamber of Commerce. That's a great way to do that. We'll probably do that through Mr. Sutton. He'd be happy to disseminate that list.
Yeah.
Now, are you going to take off that commercial one on MLK for the potential, the CRA that's pending?
I'll recommend the council does that with the next list, just to modify the list without council approval is something I'm not comfortable doing.
How does that compare? So 12 or 13 properties, and you've got some activity on some of them. How does that compare to other cities, you know?
I don't know the status of the other cities with their lists. I know St. Pete had, with their foreclosure program at one time, they had 45 lots. So they actually put together a program and a process for disposing of those lots that I really, really liked. So it's something I think I'm going to raise with the NAHAB. Potentially council if necessary, but more to come on that. But I think St. Pete with their foreclosure program, they probably have the most out of any municipality. We have a code foreclosure program that's more or less modeled after theirs, much lower scale. We're a small city, but I don't think we've had any foreclosures through the pandemic. But I'm sure at some point we'll get another batch.
Just for clarification, this list is only lots that are owned by the city that are within the affordable housing areas?
It can be anywhere in the city.
Okay.
It can be anywhere in the city.
Isn't the large lot that's on Cleveland in Missouri, not Missouri, it's not directly on Missouri, but that large lot that had the artist that made that nice fencing thing, isn't that also a lot that the city owns?
On Cleveland?
Yes.
I think that's, yeah, right next to the Verizon building?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a CRA-owned site.
Okay.
We're working, there's actually, I don't know how much I want to say, but there's interest.
Okay.
And the CRA is working very closely on a project that, what she wants to do is incorporate housing, mixed income housing. In the back of that lot, and you probably know this, there's a community garden.
Correct.
So she's interested in incorporating in a design that takes both of those things, that is a residential product that incorporates community garden, urban garden, whatever you want to call it, but make it kind of a theme of that development site, which I think is kind of a neat idea.
Yeah.
So more to come on that, but there have been some discussions on it. So
And it's such a large lot that I know we keep talking about tiny homes, but it would look very good, especially if there's gonna be different types of housing structures, to have some sort of like a mixed income and mixed type, because if somebody were, we could have some rentals, some owner.
That's a
occupied
concept that
homes.
we've heard, a lot of different housing types, including tiny homes in that site. It's about a 2.5 acre site.
Right.
So, yeah, more to come. It's very interesting. I'll certainly keep the board, the NAHAB informed on that as we move forward. Okay. All right. The only other thing I wanted to discuss before we close, 7 of the 11 members of this committee also serve on the NAHAB, the Neighborhood and Affordable Housing Advisory Board. So I want to take this opportunity to thank a NAHAB board member who has provided 22 years of service on our board. 1998, Peggy was appointed to our board. She's been a Clearwater resident for 41 years. So she's retired. She fills a seat that represents the real estate industry. She's retired from that. Her license is lapsed. So it's time for her to move on, and we're going to miss her. She, from local government and what we do in local government, I can say that Peggy's truly been alphabetized. And what I mean by that is she knows all about CDBG, SHIP, home. She sat through presentations. At some level, approved 22 CAPERs, 22 AAPs, 5 AHECs. She's approved 7 LHAPs. So I think you can see where I'm going with this alphabet thing. She's helped to provide guidance on all of our regulatory plans for housing community development work along the way. We sprinkled in NAHAB discussions with some emergency funding like we're dealing with now. Not long ago, there was NSP money that was intended to pull people out of the recession. Peggy's been part of helping, really tens of thousands of Clearwater residents and with community development and housing needs. So I want to thank Peggy for her dedication, and more importantly for your professionalism and your kindness. So thank you. So if any board members want to, any members of the board that have worked with Peggy over the years want to have any comment, feel free.
Peggy, I just want to echo what Chuck said. You have been a institution in our board, and we appreciate, and I appreciate your support in new members, your support of mentoring us as we come on board, and look forward to continuing your leadership on the board. As you have mentored us, we hope to mentor new folks, and we do appreciate all of the 22 years you have dedicated to the board. Thank you.
Anything you'd like to say?
It's been a real trip. I mean, I've learned a lot being on this board. I've met some amazing people along the years. I got on this board from a commissioner by the name of Mamie Hodges. She knew I was in real estate. We bowled together. And she says, you need to get on this board. Well, I got on the board and then she left. So I've been here all the time and she's, still out there somewhere. But it was good. It was a good experience. It's a nice way of being able to keep a scope on your city. And that's why I used to ask a lot of questions of what's going on in this lot or going over here, because it affects us all. No matter where you live and what we do, we have to more or less keep our unity within our city.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
So before we adjourn, are there any closing comments from any board members? Again, thank you all. Appreciate all the work you've done and the time you spent on this, and we'll see you all again next year. Meeting adjourned.